Hi, Uma, welcome. You've just come with the excitement of discovering or spotting the golden tigers. Tell us.
So maybe it's a lot of ado about nothing, but I work on
that's
tigers.
what science is all about in any case. Sorry.
And
joking.
So basically this is a very unusual color morph.
Yeah.
Tigers have three colors, orange, black and white. This morph or appearance has no black, so it's kind of bleached.
Yeah.
And it's called a tabby.
It was spotted in
Kaziranga.
Kaziranga. And your team has been there for the last 10 days, you're saying? Yeah.
Trying to actually collect a sample from that individual.
Okay. Sample of hair. No?
Yeah.
Not of.
Or non-invasive samples. Yeah. So anyway, so that's something.
So that's very exciting. Yeah.
To investigate for another day, but
we'll talk about
thrills.
it. Yeah. So Uma, as you know, this is a conversation on gender in science, but with a feminist perspective. And just to keep it on the board cleanly, that feminism is about using gender as a lens to look at various social institutions and to look at how patriarchy operates within these. And science often is seen as being very value neutral and gender neutral. And yet empirically what we see is there's the glass ceiling, there's the asbestos ceiling, there is a leaky pipeline, low representation of women, imposter syndrome, less awards going to women's ways. We see discrimination everywhere. So what is your feeling? Why do we still think of it as being very value neutral when we see all this? Firstly, do we see it? Do you agree it's there?
So I think that basically, the kind of the premise or the bedrock of science is objectivity, right? And it's supposed to be a very objective approach, almost like personless.
Yes, sadly, that's the idea of objectivity.
That's the idea of objectivity.
Sadly.
But on the other hand, any creative enterprise is completely about individuals. And the way I do science versus someone else does science, my ideas, their ideas, completely different. Even the same question,
right.
the way I would approach it is completely different from someone else.
Yeah.
So this is kind of an inherent contradiction, if you will.
Yeah.
And I think that like any other human enterprise, there are biases, right? So I think that of course there are gaps, and we do see this.
Yeah.
And I especially feel like as you get more and more senior, you see this more and more, and also that's part of the transition. So if you look at there's almost equal representation at the level of PhD students, sometimes more women in things like biology.
In biology. Maybe
not
not
at all
so much in physics.
Yeah, in physics and stuff.
No. Yeah.
But then, as you look at more and more senior positions, there's fewer and fewer women.
Exactly. Yeah. So the pyramid structure exists, no? You start because you have almost 30-40% women in all basic sciences, undergraduate, postgraduate and PhD level, no? But Uma, this question of objectivity, is something I want to pick up on, that we think that objectivity is by keeping the person out.
Correct.
By keeping the history out, by keeping the culture out. We tend to think that that's the way to gain objectivity. But on the other hand, probably it's a better way to gain objectivity when we bring the person in. When we sort of bring diversity of perspectives into knowledge making. And maybe therefore we become more objective. So for example, a lot of work, as we know in feminist biology on the question of natural sex selection has changed dramatically because feminists have asked different questions now, right? And so therefore brought in the whole perspective, which is from, say, how the female species is constructed, female of a species is constructed. And therefore don't you think that this kind of intervention actually brings in more objectivity?
Definitely. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, it's even, you can think about it at various levels, right? Like whether it is people from the global south versus, I think that, you kind of see these
different
things.
races.
Yeah, different ethnic backgrounds, different cultural experiences. I think the way one approaches questions is different, but also the approach itself is different. How
Can you give me an example?
So I mean, I would give an example from myself.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
I really love people. So I think that is something which is really helpful to me in my work, because I work outside this bubble we're in, and I work.
You're a field biologist.
I do a lot of field work with my team, of course.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people whom we meet, bureaucrats, people from rural areas, and I think that interaction, I don't see it. It really enriches me, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
So I think that helps. Whereas somebody else would not be like that. So it's just different.
Does it also help you to ask the scientific question differently, little bit?
I think so, because looking at someone else's perspective, I might have a burning desire to answer a question. And in that sense, I think science and academia is inherently very selfish, in the sense that you want to know something.
I know.
You have to figure it out, right? Until you die, you have to figure it out.
And just like that.
Yeah, exactly. Just like that. But I think, interacting with others forces you to confront the enormity of that. Like, for you, that's really important. But then, when someone challenges it, you have to rethink. And so I think any kind of challenge is really good for growth. And without growth, you cannot be a good scientist. So whether you're challenged by another scientist, a bureaucrat, a local person from the area you're working, everyone helps you grow.
That just like that bit was simply because when she walked in and told me about the golden tiger and she was so excited. I said, what? Why are you so excited? And she said, just like that. Anyway, coming to the next point, as feminists, we also have observed that the disciplines are also gendered. Physics is considered to be far more exact and abstract and formal and therefore masculine, and biology is considered to be more feminine. What? Why does this happen?
So I work on tigers, right? And that's like, carnivores are like a super macho feeling. You're like in this jeep and you're driving, and air in your hair or whatever. It's a very macho, like catching animals, collaring them. So I think that I guess it is like that. Like, there are some fields perceived as very macho. Fieldwork in general is perceived as very macho.
Fieldwork is perceived as macho, but then the science, the biology around it is still not as macho as, say, physics is.
Definitely. It's considered a soft science. In fact, I've had this experience where I've had, a conversation with, a well-known physicist actually in India, who said, anyway, it's good that you're, we must, apart from the basic sciences, we must pursue these soft sciences like ecology. And I think pinning anything into this or that is. I'm sure there's very, very challenging aspects to all kinds of science. So this soft, hard, applied, basic, I don't think.
No, even for us, for example, the economist will always tell you, sociology is not really a science. It's about, subjective voices and things like that. And in sociology, you'll be amazed that theory is seen to be as much more a masculine pursuit. And women should be doing things like marriage and family, studies on marriage and family. So does it sort of exist even within biology? Say, molecular genetic biology is considered to be far more moving in the direction of physics and therefore much more valued than other forms.
I think so. And I think it's also about, at least I see it as also about risk. So I've often felt that people conceive what I'm doing as risky. Working in remote locations or in protected areas. A lot of people say, aren't you scared, like walking in the forest? And there's an undertone of, should you really be taking risks? I guess I really, first of all, I don't think it's a risk. And I kind of, I like risky things, and I think in gender exploration is also risky, right?
Yeah,
exploration is the unknown, and so I think that
it's also risky to go into space, no?
Exactly. So basically, there are some things which are inherently risky, inherently expensive, or high investment. Does not necessarily mean money, but like intense. And so I think that sometimes people feel like, oh, that is not something that women should be doing.
You know, I wanted to ask you also about field work. You know, while it is risky and you seem so excited and wonderfully excited, we also hear about stories from female students, researchers, who feel that fieldwork is actually very risky from another point of view, which is that they are thrown into the field with men and women researchers together. Often they are sharing rooms, and often, you know, that is happening. They are menstruating. That becomes a very difficult space for them to share. Men are generally not necessarily very careful about what they wear, what they don't wear. So is the field work also risky from that point of view for girls? Or how have you navigated this with your students, with yourself?
So, I mean, I guess, you know, I come from a generation and a perspective where I didn't think so much about these things for myself. And I think that, of course, I have tried to encourage people to talk about what they're feeling. We've also tried to make a kind of a guideline for everybody who's in the field. I stay in touch with we have a lot of volunteers also who join us, and I
is there a document of sort?
Yeah, I do have a document, but
that's it for your lab.
Yeah, for my lab. But recently there's been a lot of discussion about this publicly, right?
Yes.
So there's been a lot of work in the US, and there's this beautiful documentary called Picture a Scientist, where there's a lot of discussion about harassment in the field, actually.
Yes.
Geologist.
Correct.
And then there was also this recent, stuff which is happening in India with Total Survival Alliance and harassment in the field. So there is a lot of discussion going on about it. And so I really try to encourage the women who are part of our teams, and also women who are leading the teams, to discuss, be open about what they feel.
So that something can be done.
Yeah, because the reality is sometimes there aren't a lot of good facilities, and you do have to manage. At the same time, I have to say that sometimes, those experiences are golden. Like, being in a place where you're just looking for wildlife, or you're just doing some work, and experiencing it so deeply with some others, they bind you for life.
Right.
I feel like that, and so in a way, it's also a really amazing opportunity. We shouldn't overlook the nice parts of it.
If it can be made safe.
Definitely, no doubt about it. It should not be unsafe for anyone, right? And so people should feel free to speak up, and sometimes it's not for everyone.
Because
that
you
has
can,
happened.
but you can also then ask, being there, you can ask very different kind of questions of the field, of the domain that you're working with, no? Like, I think
and that's not only about women. So, I mean, I think that, some people are just not comfortable crawling into bat caves. I'm not comfortable wading in monsoon ponds to catch frogs. So, I'm not, I think it's, so like you're saying about diversity and different perspectives.
And to make a space which will actually help that diversity, and people feel safe to do that. Unfortunately, we are not doing that, and we should be working towards that is, I guess, what. And sexual harassment, say in institutions. I mean, this is something we don't talk about. I was telling you, I think I remember that during the #MeToo movement, it was very interesting. Indian academics across disciplines were named. Whereas people from the sciences were not. And one of the things that we found out is because if they name young students, for example, if they would name somebody, say a PI in the lab or something like that, and they would be transferred to another lab, and they would lose the data that they'd been working on. And so therefore none of this comes out sometimes.
So the inherent power structure in academia, especially for early career researchers, is very bad. Right? So basically, especially as a PhD student, like until you get your PhD, there's really no recourse, or there's no like either you have it or you don't, right? And even if you try to get a paper or something, it always involves approvals, or you know what I mean, like a go-ahead from a supervisor who is a PhD student. So he or she is like the master of your fate. So that's really a bad
and
thing.
this is a ready play field for those who are in power and for patriarchy and sexual harassment.
So I had really bad experiences as a PhD student.
Really?
I worked with two mentors before I worked with my final mentor, and it was really one of them would not read emails which were longer than 15 lines and did not, mostly was out of the...
This was in the
state,
US?
In the US, out of the state, right? So, and I just...
And we Indians, right? 15%? No chance. It has to be at least 150.
I kept getting the feeling like there was something wrong with my body language. So I think that, when I went to do my PhD, the person I went to work with, he had worked a lot in Thailand, and that was his experience of Asia. And so I think that when I showed up, and like, I'm not shy at all, and I talk a lot, so I think that was a shock. So I always got the vibe that my being expressive, my body language was somehow offensive.
To him?
To him and to generally
in general.
The professors who are around in the department.
That must have been a terrible feeling, no?
Yeah, especially when you're an international student, your only identity is as a student.
Right.
So, that is like defines you in some sense. So, so I think that, I guess that was an interesting experience for me to, so that I try to enable my students and the early career researchers I work with, that they make research meaningful for me. Like working with them as a team.
But what we do is we try to mentor them to fit in, like we had to fit in, rather than actually pushing and saying the culture should change. Rather than doing that, we tend to sort of then become clones of the system sometimes, no?
That is true. So that is something which is really hard, especially when you're thinking about opportunities for them, right? So, for example, and this would be great to get your thoughts on, like if you want to get an academic job, your trajectory has to be a certain way. Of course, if it's not that way, if it's a slightly different way, you can still get a job, but this kind of a trajectory is more likely to get you a job than some other trajectory.
Exactly.
So, what do you do? Do you try to encourage, if they are interested in that end goal, you encourage them to follow that trajectory? But then, like you're saying, it's cloning the system.
I think, it's complex. There's no question about it. But I think it's important for us, particularly when we are in positions to change structures, for us to keep changing those structures so that it becomes easier and easier for the younger people. So wherever we are, if we try to sort of change the structures and say that, it's all right if she doesn't have 15 publications or in these kind of journals, it's all right if she has 6 or 7, I think that makes a lot of difference in terms of changing the yardsticks.
Definitely.
Or for example, for us in the social sciences, one of the biggest thing, Uma, is language. So when I see a struggle with the English language from people who come from marginal groups without the cultural capital of coming from very elite schools or universities, I have to actually start arguing with the journals and the publishers that a different kind of English is to be encouraged. And I'm not going to sit in as an editor, change the English. I'm going to try and... So it's about pushing certain of these criteria and standards of what is good, what is bad,
But I think, like you were saying earlier, I think everyone, every individual has a lot of strengths. Every individual. And basically, research involves all kinds of, strengths. And traits, let's say. So I think that that's what really
As a sociologist, for me, the concern and the worry is that when we look at the scientific community, unfortunately, or only a certain group of people, their abilities have been encouraged. That is what we need to really apply our mind in the future. That
so that's what, so basically if strengths can be brought out.
Diversity brings in a difference, and difference can hopefully bring in a different science to do, Anyway, these are long questions. I'm going to now take you into childhood.
Okay.
All this, risk-taking, this great joy of working with the wild. Where did it come from? As a girl child, what were your experiences being raised as a girl child? Did you feel that there were ways in which you were shaped to be a girl and to become a woman?
So I think that, as far as what I love, I always loved animals, and I always basically forced my parents to take me to every zoo, every city we visited and stuff. But I think that I kind of socially conditioned myself, or whatever, I was conditioned, I don't know whether it was at home or elsewhere, to think of a career where I would be kind of more, it would be less risky in some sense. So I always thought about doing something like, I don't know, like modeling or theory or something like that, which kind of kept me.
For a moment, I thought modeling on the ramp.
No.
Which also you can do if you want to.
But
sorry.
More, kept me more home, right? But I think somewhere along the way, I realized it. Probably at the worst time to realize this, when I had a very young family and I had a job, I realized that I really love the outdoors. And I really love work which is very much based in the outdoors. So for example, if you ask me to do the same work with flies in the lab, I can ask those questions with flies. I would not do it. I would rather do something else. So I'm not so wedded to the questions that I would work on flies or mice or something.
But you want to work in the wild.
Yeah, and maybe in that part of looking for my own strengths or looking for my own uniqueness, I also realized that that's there's not a lot of people, or I guess I don't want to comment on others. That is a strength for me, is to seek out the unknown and to basically explore.
So, you are part of two siblings.
Yeah, I have a brother. Younger brother.
So, when you were growing up, were you conscious of being a girl in school, in the house, in the extended family, and how did that sort of relate to your this desire and pursuit of, for the want of a better world, the wild?
I think I don't. I think that there was. I didn't really think of myself so much as a girl.
You didn't.
Not really. So that's why even growing up, I used to climb trees.
You said you were the typical tomboy.
Yeah, quote unquote. So I used to really love playing. I used to. There was in our campus. I grew up on the IISc campus. There was a girls group who would go for walks in the evening and chitter chatter and all. And I would never do that. I would. I always felt I should try and belong there. I have this issue of wanting to belong
everywhere.
Yeah, but I guess I was more the kind who would get dirty, fall down, play, more rough and tumble kind of person.
And this was okay at home.
It was okay at home. I don't think there was much of a. At some point when I was a teenager, there was a little bit of an expectation of decorum.
That comes, no? Puberty, and we are all then policed. At least I was.
Yeah.
Little bit.
And I don't think decorum is something which I don't really. I'm like a little bit of a. I don't care what, whatever. I'm not decorum is not a word which comes to mind when you think of me. So I don't think I behave a specific way as I'm expected to, or something like that. So I think I've always been a rebel. Even as a teenager, I was a rebel.
What does that mean?
Well, you know, I used to stay out late.
Okay.
I used to, have a lot of friends who were guys.
Yeah.
Not necessarily boyfriends in the sense of.
That's also okay.
Yeah, that's also okay. But I'm just saying that
I
was
had
very,
lot of male friends.
Yeah, lots of male friends. I used to drive really fast.
Yeah.
I used to have
what car did you
Honda.
have? Oh,
No.
Honda.
Yeah, I had this kinetic Honda automatic scooter. But generally, I was a rebel. So I guess like
this was where in Chennai? No, Bangalore.
Bangalore.
I see.
Yeah. So basically, I would say my bachelors. Like 11th and 12th and bachelors, I was quite rebellious.
Okay.
So I would close my room door, which I asked my daughters not to do today. So stuff like that. I was not a good girl, let's say.
Glad that you weren't. And then school, how was school?
So school was, again, like I said, I think I kind of...
the classroom was a fair space, Uma, in terms of girls, boys, because we hear a lot of girls feeling very uneasy in a science classroom because they're made to feel uneasy. They're made to feel as if they don't belong there. Teachers will be paying attention to the boys, encouraging them when they're doing good maths or physics.
Yeah.
Did you?
I don't
you
think
didn't
I
go
felt
through
that
it.
so much. I think I did feel.
But
like
do you think it exists?
Definitely, I
it
think
does,
so,
no?
Yeah. Especially for math.
Yeah.
Math and physics and chemistry.
The queen of sciences, maths.
So I guess I was in a Gentry Award Institute of Science, so there was a lot of scientist kids there. So it was a slightly different, more open environment. But I was definitely, like I said, I was definitely a rebel, and I think I was punished for my behavior as a rebel.
Okay.
I was too outspoken, I was too naughty, I was up to no good, basically. The only reason I didn't get into a lot of trouble was I was a decent student. So if I was a bad student...
Academic.
Yeah. So I was not like, whatever, I would talk in class or play tricks and things like that. So
tell us which trick, one trick, what did you do?
We used to...
Tell.
I mean, maybe eat in class or... sit at the back, and I have a loud laugh. So people crack jokes and I'm caught. So things like that. I mean, not really bad stuff, but I'm just saying that I was not the studious person who would. So I really, that way I think of myself as it's unlikely that I became an academic because I'm not one of those studious, good students from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Then how did you become the academic? From school, what was the journey?
Yeah, so basically, I always wanted to study ecology, and after my bachelor's...
Because of your love for the wild and all
yeah,
of
well,
that.
after high school, my father was on a sabbatical for a year, and I decided to go along, take a gap year. He was at Princeton, so I just decided to audit courses there, and I did a wide variety of courses because I had no clue what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
From modern dance to human evolution, where we got to look at skulls of ancient humans and archaic humans, to biology, and I volunteered in a lab for some time, so I got to actually look at some early studies in molecular ecology. So my interest was really piqued, but then there was no good way to study ecology in India at that time. It's very quantitative.
Yeah, okay, so, in India.
Yeah, so basically I didn't want to drop math, so I did physics, chemistry, math. And then the only masters I was eligible for in biology was biotechnology.
Okay.
So that's what I did for my masters.
Okay.
But in a way, all of this kind of prepped me for this field I'm in right now, which is molecular ecology, which is both quantitative but also requires molecular tools.
So you use a lot of maths?
Well, it's more statistics.
More statistics
and,
than mathematics.
Some programming and stuff. But basically, some analytical approach. Basically, not so much of math as in more analytical thinking.
Yeah.
If I had like done a bachelor's in biology, I would have had to do at that time chemistry, botany, zoology. And oh, by the way, the other reason I didn't do that is because I cannot draw. So it was like a very practical decision.
You can do math, but you can't draw.
Yeah. And a lot of the botany and zoology was a lot of drawing of those leaf structure and all that.
You didn't do that. No. You didn't like it.
It was too much for me.
So you're breaking that stereotype that, girls can't do analytical thinking, but they're very good at drawing. That's why their biology journals are so pretty.
Yeah, exactly.
Lovely. Thank you for that bit. So I remember you telling me at one point that family was something you wanted.
Yeah.
Right? Want to take us through that? And there are times you sit down now and think, is this where I wanted to be?
Yeah. So
something like that.
Yeah, family is, I guess, like I said, I kind of was, I felt like that's what life is about. It's about getting married and having a family. And somehow I didn't really question it or ask why, or it just seemed like that's what it was.
Yeah, most of us,
so,
quite a lot of us grew up with that idea.
So I'm really lucky to have an amazing partner and husband who's really supported me, and I guess I also realized somewhere along the way that I'm someone who needs a lot of freedom, and in some sense family is very binding.
Of course.
Not necessarily from a mental perspective, but from a time perspective, just from a practical perspective.
Physically, much work.
So I guess I'm really lucky that I have an amazing family. I have 2 daughters. But sometimes I wonder, like, if I had more time, it might be nice. I feel like I don't get to think enough. I'm doing a lot of stuff. I'm very busy, but I would love more time to think.
Reflect.
And I feel like when there's a lot of busyness in life, that becomes very tough.
Yeah. So that's one of the things I wanted to ask is, suppose if you're given total freedom, free of all these responsibilities, what is it that you would like to do?
Oh, I would love to read and reflect and
also on your science.
Yeah. Basically on a lot of the ideas.
Or dance.
Also have more time just for myself to walk, to be outdoors, and
it would not be a single-minded approach to science, right? It would be.
No. I think I would like. I do a lot of things. I would just like more time to do them with leisure a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I have packed my life, packed it, and I've just rushed through it. And sometimes I've had I'm not dying or something, but I've had an amazing life. I've had such amazing opportunities and experiences, and I'm so grateful.
Yeah, it's such a privilege that some of us have.
Privilege, but I just never took a breath. I hurtled through it. And sometimes I wish I had had that time, in that moment, to take a breath.
I'm sure it'll come.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm sure it'll come. One of the things that we keep hearing, as feminists who are studying science and women in science, one of the things that we keep hearing is that, women, when they make it in science, they reproduce and replicate very, very aggressive, very, very toxic masculine cultures. And, they shouldn't do it because, they've gone through it, this is the problem, they should do it differently. And my response has always been, why is the onus on the women? They are doing exactly what they need to do in order to fit in.
Yeah.
It's just that when men do it, we take it to be natural. And when women do it, we think of it as a problem. Does this happen, Uma?
I think so. I think there is kind of expectation that women should be more understanding and more, like, I've heard people say, people have said to me, you're so good with people, you're so so you'll be very good to work with lots of students, and I'm not saying that's a wrong approach. I think every individual has
should
the
be do
responsibility
that.
in science to make environments not toxic.
Yeah.
And very
Why should the
frankly-
onus be on women?
No, and very frankly, even from a very practical perspective, even if you're not thinking about society and all that, non-toxic environments bring out the best in people,
Yeah.
and you'll be surprised with how joyous they are. I mean, that would be my response to
Yeah,
someone
but
who
we
has a
become toxic because there's so much pressure to be that, no? Sometimes.
I know, but I think that we have to make that conscious choice to not promote toxic environments. I think it's hard. There are a lot of pressures, but it is also a choice. We have to say we do not want to promote toxicity, and everyone needs to do that, because I do think that environments in academia are toxic.
Is it because they are inherently we set up competition? One-upmanship.
And it's also this whole excellence thing, right?
Tell me more.
Basically, you're trying to do something which is really insightful, amazing,
Original,
new, right?
Yeah,
So
path-breaking.
Exactly. So how do you do that? It's like
Yeah.
that immediately puts a lot of pressure on you.
Yeah.
It kind of becomes competitive because it has to be the best.
Yeah.
So-
Imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Everybody has to be the genius.
Yeah.
And this genius, to make this genius, women for example, don't have the context in which we can become genius. Because every time we have to go back, take care of this one, do this, do
Yeah.
that, sort of
So
thing.
I personally think that the one path is to kind of really, as an individual, really assess who are you. And I feel like I think that like the way I do science is different from the way somebody else will do science. How fast I do it, how slow I do it, how well I do it, it's all up to me.
But if you put the burden too much on the individual, that also can be very, it can break us. I think the structure should be such that it allows people
Yeah.
who do it very differently, who are not running on the rat race for this or that,
Yeah.
but who also who survive.
Yeah,
no?
yeah, I mean, I think that way TIFR is an amazing place. I think it supports, it's one of the few places which in some ways
NCBS.
allows that culture. Yeah, NCBS. And I guess I haven't worked in the rest of the TIFR system, but as an ideology, I feel like I've always felt that. That's what I really have liked about being at NCBS almost 20 years now, is freedom. Just
And
people-
yet there are standards of excellence
Of
that
course,
are
of
very
course, of course,
demanding,
very, very demanding.
on human beings. No, I think we need to probably rethink some of that.
Yeah.
Now, a little bit of a fun question. It's not really fun, but so there's this whole thing about performance, no? And women in science are expected to perform femininity in a particular way.
Oh yeah.
Tell us, do you think so? You can't dress too heavily, you can't dress too sedately. What is this? What have you experienced it? How do you see it? How do you reflect on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I guess I feel like it's very much a personal choice. And
Yeah.
I think that
But our personal choices are so conditioned, no?
right, they're definitely
By the
conditioned.
environment, which will tell you कि if you dress in this way, then you're not taken seriously.
Correct.
है ना? And if you dress in this way, then you're not attractive
Yes.
as a woman.
Yes. Yeah. So the problem is that at least for me, I always felt that I could never satisfy those norms because I would feel too uncomfortable. Like I cannot wear a sari and teach a class or whatever, right? And I have
Or give
taken-
flowers at a conference.
Yeah, and also even for example, for me, I think I felt it more in the context of when I had young kids.
Okay.
I would sometimes, take my baby into the class,
Huh.
with that baby born or whatever,
Huh.
or sometimes on my hip,
Huh.
take them with me to the field, and I know that. I think I felt like there was an expectation that that's not professional,
Yeah.
but I ignored.
Yeah,
those.
because what is professional for a woman who has children and who's going into the fields?
Right.
She has to take them there.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know? Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
I have mostly ignored and followed my internal, compass. But I think you're right. I mean, there's a lot of there is definitely that range. Between,
Yeah, expectation that you will do something. You will behave as a woman and a woman in science. And this is not just for clothes or dress. It's also about how loudly you talk,
Yes.
Do you speak at the wrong time in a meeting?
Yes.
Do you speak at the right time in a meeting? We all go through this, no? As feminists, we've been mulling over this question of the role of science in society, the role of science in the way it has looked at nature. Nature has been feminized, overpowered, controlled. Nature is always she, and overpowered, controlled. Similar things happen to women in patriarchal cultures. But what has this led to? What it has led to is the kind of risk society that we live in today. You know, where we've tried to break the secrets open of nature in order to control and engineer, right? And where has it brought us? And do we need to sort of change our direction if at all any of this is reversible? You know, we've sort of, climate change is what we are living with. We are living with the atom bomb, the fear of it any time. So how do you look at it as a woman? You know, we live very relational lives as women, no? I mean, do you think that there's something that we can contribute to a re-envisioning of science? And you work in ecology, so do we need to change some bit of our thinking?
I think that
and is it happening?
We need to think a little bit more about values and purpose when thinking about science. So the whole training of as scientists is about, is intellectual in the sense of, like, okay, these are the questions, this is how you answer the question, breaking things down. It is
reductive, analytic.
Reductive. But I think that a lot of things which are ignored are values. I mean, we do ethical clearances, but they are done as, tick marks. And discussion of values is never something which we do. But I think we must prioritize empathy and thinking about things a little bit more from a value perspective, and also about others, like, what people say whom we work with, or science is very, academia is very individualistic. So that is something which I feel from a pursuit perspective. So this is more, thinking about the practice of science. I feel that values, purpose, should be discussed much more. They are not points of discussion at all. So probably, or I don't know, but maybe in social sciences they are.
Yeah.
Like, do people talk about their values, as
influencing things,
correct,
or
correct.
how do you
At the same time, how science should change, I think there should be much more interdisciplinarity. And recently, for example, there was this guy Lewis Hu, right, who came and gave a talk, and he was talking about how they're working on climate change, but they're actually defining the questions ground up.
Yeah.
So they're working with communities.
Absolutely.
And then they are pairing communities with scientists.
Yeah.
So that's such a radically different way of thinking about science.
Yeah.
Where, climate change is actually affecting the communities. Scientists have been talking about it, but where does that go? It's a paper and then it just disappears. So I think we all need to really
strengthen that link.
Yeah, definitely. How it will happen, I don't know. So that is something which, the problem is that, again, everything is, so basically I guess what I'm saying is there should be more bottom-up engagement in terms of science. Current models are very top-down.
Top-down.
So because it's basically about
expert, the expert
and the
idea.
expert gets the funding and things like that.
So, and I think you're right, in a way this will happen with a fair amount of interdisciplinarity coming in, where in a university setup, for example, a science student can easily probably go and study philosophy, read philosophy, whereas in these very isolated research institutes.
Yeah, so that's one of the problems, I think, in India. What I really enjoyed about when I was doing my PhD in the US, when you go to a campus like Berkeley, you see, so many announcements of talks and free Tibet and like all kinds of stuff, right? So it's very vibrant. Whereas, this is a bubble.
Yeah.
So
We've sort of,
I think that that's something which but on the other hand, there's so much of rich scholarship in India.
Yeah.
It's just.
But it's happening at the university
silos,
levels
yeah.
also. But we tend to look at only the research institutes
Correct.
as sites of producing excellent research.
And that's wrong.
Yeah.
That's wrong.
Yeah.
So how
we are
is that
not
going to
strengthening our
change?
universities.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I don't know, I mean, there is some discussion that the NRF, the new National Research Foundation, will allow integrative research, including social sciences.
But it has to be, like you said, critical. It
Yes.
has to be about moral, values that come
Yeah.
from, top, bottom up. It has to be about the marginal people. It
Yes.
can't just be integrating, say, perspectives from management and
Right.
this and that.
Right.
No,
Right.
it may, but I'm just saying that if you
No.
really want to
Yeah.
serve the purpose.
Yeah, because then you talk about, or you have this evidence. Now, how do you get, say, community adoption of those new
Like for
ideas?
in tiger conservation, for
Yeah.
example, now people are talking about livelihood.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? How conservation versus people's livelihood has
Yeah.
become now a very important discourse.
Yeah.
But otherwise, in the early phase, perhaps, I don't know, correct me if I'm
Yeah.
wrong,
So there's a
it
lot-
was
yeah.
about tigers and not about the people.
Right,
That
right,
it was,
yeah.
no?
So I think all those things have to change, and I don't know whether we are preparing. I think maybe the way graduate programs are, or
Yes.
PhD programs are,
Yeah.
they have to change. And for example, you ran a class here, and it was enjoyed greatly, and I'm sure it will affect the perspective of all those students.
I hope so.
Going
Yeah,
forward.
yeah.
So how do we build these spaces where there's more?
Of coming together
Yes.
of not only the academia and the grassroots, but also within the academia,
Yeah.
different perspectives.
Yeah.
No? Yeah. I wanted to ask you one very important question.
Yeah, sure.
You study hair
Yeah.
and you study fecal matter.
Yes.
Women deal with fecal matter all the time, no?
Yes.
With children and this and that. But you're also a very upper caste person where all this has been traditionally stigmatized, What were the challenges for you and what's the fun?
Yes, I've told you, right? Poop is fascinating. It's a treasure trove of information. I've said this on record. Many
You've said
times.
it several times. Yeah.
And I think that you may not that may just sound like empty words, but when you're walking in a forest
Yeah.
and you see tiger feces,
Yeah.
and you can kind of open it up with your shoe
Yeah.
or a stick, and you see hooves and you see like stuff in it.
Yeah.
It's just so amazing because there's so much discovery to be done.
Yeah.
And for rare species, I think it's just really amazing that you can get anything. Right? That you can even get hair from some of these individuals. That's like pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course, it is refuge. And
Yeah.
I've had people comment that I'm filling the institution with shit. Or all I do is go on vacations, collect shit. So it's all in jest, but all jest also has a
undercurrent. Don't we know that?
Yeah.
Particularly.
And there's been some crazy experiences. Like once, I think there was a blood-stained envelope in Canada, which came to Vijay Raghavan's office, and then he immediately looked and said, "This should go to Uma's lab." Anytime a stinking parcel comes to NCBS, they're like, okay, we know it goes to Uma's lab. So yeah, I mean it's in jest, but for us that's like really gold.
Yeah.
And explaining to my in-laws that that I do collect shit, I think they were a little surprised because,
and you're not in a path lab, you're actually
Exactly.
doing some frontline
that
research.
to animal shit, not even human shit. So yeah, I've even traveled on planes with it. So I often arrive in like if I go to the field or something, when I go to visit my students, I usually bring back samples. And my bag, you're in Delhi airport, everybody, Delhi, everybody's so well dressed, and I have a bag full of shit. So yeah.
I know, I was told by a Brahmin relative once, that if you have a dog in the house, I will not step into your house.
Yeah.
Anyway, so thank you, Uma. It was a wonderful, wonderful chat. And I hope you find that little time to breathe, reflect, and do your own thing.
Thank you so much.
Bye.